Most people spend their lives competing with others, comparing themselves to friends, to coworkers, to strangers on the internet. But the real competition was never out there. It's in here. The only person you need to beat is the person you were yesterday. Growth isn't measured by trophies or by what others say about us. It's measured by internal progress. Did you respond more calmly to stress today than yesterday? Did you put in 5 more minutes of focus? Did you do something a little braver, a little more honest, a little more difficult? That's the metric that matters. That's where your power lies. When we compare ourselves to others, we tend to copy them. But when we focus on our own improvement, we evolve. And evolution isn't fast or loud. It's subtle. You won't notice it day by day, but give it time and you'll realize you've become someone stronger, wiser, more resilient. Here's the truth. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be better. And better means you don't quit after you fail. Better means you don't let yesterday's mistakes define today's actions. Better means progress, not perfection. Consistency, not intensity. Commitment, not comparison. This mindset, me vs me, gives you permission to grow without guilt. It means your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It means your pace is valid, your goals are valid, your process is valid. There is no race. There is only the next right step. And the beauty of this idea is that it brings the focus back to where it belongs, your daily choices, your mindset, your values. You can't control what others do, but you can control how you show up today. You can choose discipline over distraction. You can choose learning over comfort. You can choose to care about your body, your mind, your time, your future. Because if you improve just 1% each day, you won't be the same person a year from now. You'll be better, not by accident, but by intention. And that kind of growth, quiet, consistent, committed, is the most powerful kind there is. The journey isn't about chasing someone else's finish line. It's about waking up each day and asking one simple question. How can I be a better version of myself today? Not perfect, not the best, just better. You don't need to win, you need to evolve. And that happens every time you choose growth over comfort. It happens every time you take responsibility instead of making excuses. It happens when you realize that becoming better isn't a destination. It's a daily decision. 5 keynotes from the speech. The real competition is internal, not external. It's always you vis you. Daily progress, not perfection, is the foundation of long-term growth. Comparison leads to imitation. Self-focus leads to evolution. Consistent effort and small wins compound into meaningful transformation. Growth is not a race. It's a personal commitment to show up better than you did yesterday. The real competition is internal, not external. It's always you vis you. This idea challenges one of the most deeply rooted behaviors in human nature: comparison. From a young age, we are conditioned to measure our worth based on how we perform relative to others. Grades, rankings, social status, job titles, they all reinforce the notion that success is about being ahead of the next person. But that model is broken because it builds a mindset that's reactive rather than reflective. When we focus on others, we stop paying attention to ourselves. And when we stop paying attention to ourselves, we lose sight of what truly matters: our personal growth, our integrity, our journey. The real battle is not between you and your peers. It's between the version of you that wants to grow and the version of you that wants to stay comfortable. It's the inner conflict between potential and resistance. One part of you wants to evolve, to build better habits, to push your limits. But another part of you resists change, clings to excuses, and settles for the familiar. Every day, those two sides meet. And every day, you have a choice: which one are you going to strengthen? You means looking in the mirror and being honest about what needs to improve. It means accepting responsibility instead of shifting blame. It's easier to say, he got lucky, or she had more help, or they started earlier. But none of those statements move you forward. None of them build discipline. None of them train your character. That's why the moment you stop comparing and start reflecting, you begin to take control of your progress. This internal competition is not about self-judgment. It's about self-awareness. You're not fighting yourself to tear yourself down. You're holding yourself accountable because you know what you're capable of. You know you can do better, not because someone else is ahead of you, but because yesterday's version of you didn't give it everything. You means that your measurement of progress becomes internal. You ask yourself, was I more focused than I was yesterday? Did I choose discipline over distraction today? Did I speak with more honesty, more kindness, more courage? This shift in mindset is powerful. Because when your competition is someone else, you can always find an excuse. You can say they had an advantage. You can tell yourself the playing field isn't fair, and maybe it's not. But when the competition is you, there are no excuses. There's just effort. There's just consistency. There's just truth. The progress becomes about aligning your actions with your values, not outperforming someone else's goals. People who focus on others often burn out. They chase validation, not meaning. They measure their lives in likes and applause, not in fulfillment and growth. But people who compete with themselves build a different kind of life. A life that's based on internal alignment, not external approval. They move quietly but intentionally. They don't need recognition to stay motivated. They're driven by the desire to be the kind of person they admire. They're not chasing success. They're chasing integrity. And that's what gives them staying power. You also brings clarity. It simplifies life. Because now you don't have to track what everyone else is doing. You don't need to compare your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. You don't need to run their race. You have your own race, your own metrics, your own direction, and that focus is freeing. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you committed. The truth is there's always someone better, faster, smarter. If you spend your energy trying to catch them, you'll never feel enough. But when you spend that energy becoming more of who you can be, you win. Every time you show up and try again after failure, you win. Every time you do something uncomfortable that pushes you forward, you win. Every time you break a pattern, overcome a fear, or build a better habit, you win. Because in this competition, progress is victory. And the beautiful part of competing with yourself is that it's sustainable. You don't burn out trying to be someone else. You evolve by being honest about where you are and intentional about where you want to go. That kind of growth takes time, but it builds something real, something that lasts. It builds confidence rooted in self-respect. It builds discipline rooted in self-awareness, and it builds a mindset that doesn't chase the spotlight. It creates its own light from within. Daily progress, not perfection, is the foundation of long-term growth. This principle is often overlooked because we live in a world that glorifies perfection. From polished social media posts to carefully crafted success stories, we're surrounded by the illusion that the most valuable achievements come from flawless execution. But real growth doesn't work like that. It doesn't happen in leaps and bounds. It happens in quiet, steady, often unnoticed steps taken day after day. The pursuit of perfection leads to pressure, burnout, and ultimately paralysis. The pursuit of progress leads to resilience, learning, and real transformation. When you strive for perfection, you become overly focused on outcomes. You start obsessing over getting everything right the first time, and that obsession becomes a barrier. It makes you afraid to try, afraid to fail, afraid to take action unless you can guarantee a perfect result. That's where people get stuck. They wait for the perfect conditions, the perfect plan, the perfect version of themselves before they begin. But growth doesn't wait. It rewards movement. It rewards those who are willing to take small, imperfect steps and keep moving forward no matter what. Daily progress means you're measuring yourself against who you were yesterday, not who you think you should be someday. It's about building momentum. It's about showing up even when motivation fades and putting in effort even when you don't feel like it. Some days that effort will be big, finishing a major task, breaking a bad habit, speaking up when it's hard. Other days it will be small, resisting an old impulse, reading a page, showing up on time, making a better choice. But small doesn't mean insignificant. Small means sustainable. And when done consistently, those small efforts compound. People underestimate how powerful daily effort is because they're looking for dramatic change. But real change is usually quiet. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It grows under the surface. A tree doesn't become tall overnight. Its roots deepen first. You don't see the change right away, but it's happening. Every day you choose to move forward, especially on the days you don't feel like it, you're laying down the structure of long-term growth. Daily progress also teaches patience. You start to understand that mastery isn't about doing something once and getting it right. It's about doing it over and over again, refining your process, learning from your mistakes, and gradually becoming better. In that sense, failure stops being something to avoid and starts becoming something to learn from. You begin to see that every misstep, every detour, every imperfect attempt is a step forward as long as you stay in the game. There's a kind of strength that comes from consistency. It's not loud or flashy. It doesn't need applause. It's the quiet power of showing up when it would be easier to quit. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you're improving, even if no one else notices yet. It's the understanding that effort matters more than talent, and that grit often beats brilliance over time. When you focus on daily progress, you develop that strength. You learn to trust the process instead of chasing quick fixes or instant results. Progress-based growth is also more forgiving. It allows room for mistakes, setbacks, and detours. It doesn't demand perfection. It demands persistence. It's not about how many times you get it right, but about how many times you get back up. This mindset gives you the freedom to experiment, to explore, to grow without fear of judgment. Because you know the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be better, a little more focused, a little more mindful, a little more courageous. Each day, just a little more. And when you start to track your life by progress rather than perfection, you begin to experience more fulfillment. You feel proud of small victories because you know they're real. You start to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. You stop putting your happiness on hold until some future version of yourself earns it. You start appreciating who you're becoming along the way, and that's a deeper kind of success. One that lasts, one that grows with you, one that's built not on flawless execution, but on the steady daily commitment to improve. Comparison leads to imitation, self-focus leads to evolution. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others. Everywhere you look, someone seems to be doing more, having more, achieving more. Social media exaggerates this, presenting the highlight reels of people's lives while hiding their struggles. The moment we start comparing, we shift our attention outward. We begin to measure our worth based on someone else's timeline, someone else's definition of success. And in doing so, we lose connection with our own purpose. Comparison steals clarity. It takes our energy away from creation and moves it toward imitation. When you compare yourself to someone else, you subconsciously try to replicate their results by mimicking their actions or lifestyle. You try to walk their path, forgetting that their path was built for their unique experiences, talents, and challenges. What works for them might not work for you, not because you're less capable, but because your blueprint is different. Your goals are meant to reflect who you are, not who someone else is. Imitation may give temporary success, but it rarely leads to long-term fulfillment, because the moment the copied formula stops working, you're left without a sense of direction or identity. Self-focus, on the other hand, allows for depth. It encourages introspection. Instead of asking, how do I measure up? You begin to ask, who am I becoming? That's the beginning of real growth. Evolution starts with understanding. When you focus on yourself, you become more aware of your strengths, your limitations, your patterns. You begin to notice how your habits affect your emotions, how your environment influences your mindset, how your thoughts shape your actions. This awareness gives you power. The power to change from the inside out, not because you want to look like someone else, but because you want to feel aligned with who you really are. There's a quiet confidence that comes from self-focus. You stop needing validation because you're no longer performing for the world. You start living with intention, making choices that align with your values rather than chasing trends. And while comparison breeds anxiety, self-focus builds peace. You stop rushing. You stop overthinking what others will think. You start asking deeper questions. What do I want to build? What kind of person do I want to be proud of at the end of the day? What can I improve today that will make me a stronger version of myself tomorrow? It's not that you never look to others for inspiration. There's nothing wrong with learning from people who are ahead of you, but there's a difference between inspiration and imitation. Inspiration invites growth. Imitation stifles it. When you're inspired, you adapt what resonates and make it your own. When you imitate, you suppress your originality to fit someone else's mold. And the world doesn't need more copies. It needs more people who are honest enough to show up as themselves, flaws and all, and brave enough to grow from that place. The pressure to keep up with others can be overwhelming. But what you need to remember is that nobody has your exact journey. Nobody has your combination of experiences, talents, fears, and dreams. And that uniqueness is your advantage, not your limitation. The more you focus on your internal development, the more grounded you become. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop casing and start creating. You begin to make decisions from a place of clarity rather than insecurity. Focusing on yourself also helps you notice progress you would otherwise ignore. When you compare, you tend to overlook how far you've come because you're so fixated on how far others seem to be. But when you stay rooted in your own lane, you can appreciate the subtle changes, the small wins, the personal milestones that may not mean anything to others but mean everything to you. That sense of ownership of building something authentic can't be replaced. Evolution is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It builds in silence through intentional effort, honest reflection, and deep personal commitment. That can only happen when your eyes are on your own path. Because when you compare, you imitate, and in doing so, you often dilute your potential. But when you focus on yourself, you unlock something unique, something powerful. You begin to evolve in a way that is true to you, not borrowed from someone else. And that is where real growth lives. Consistent effort and small wins compound into meaningful transformation. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a short period and underestimate what steady, consistent work can do over time. There's a tendency to look for shortcuts, to want instant results, to crave dramatic change that can be seen and praised right away. But the truth is, the most powerful transformations are built quietly, not in grand gestures, but in the day-to-day choices that seem small, even insignificant in the moment. They're built through actions that are easy to dismiss, but when repeated consistently, begin to reshape habits, character, and eventually entire lives. When you take a small step forward, it doesn't seem like much. Reading a page, doing 10 push-ups, saying no to a distraction, going to bed on time, writing a paragraph, none of these seem impressive in isolation. They rarely feel like progress. But what people miss is that every small action is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. It's not the size of the step that matters. It's the consistency of the direction. One step forward every day is still progress. And over time, those steps add up. They build momentum. They create patterns. They shape identity. The beauty of small wins is that they're accessible. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need a dramatic plan. You just need to do something consistently. That kind of progress is honest. It's earned. And because it's earned, it's sustainable. It doesn't rely on motivation or mood. It builds discipline through repetition. Each time you follow through on a small commitment, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted to act, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. People often dismiss small wins because they think success needs to feel dramatic, but transformation rarely happens in a single moment. It's not one big leap, it's thousands of small adjustments. The decision to speak up when you'd normally stay silent, the choice to keep going when quitting feels easier, the habit of taking ownership instead of making excuses. These moments might not seem significant on their own, but they form the building blocks of a resilient mindset. Consistency also builds confidence. When you do something every day, even something small, you begin to trust yourself more. You begin to feel capable. You no longer rely on external circumstances to dictate your behavior. You become grounded in action. You stop needing to feel ready because you've trained yourself to act regardless of how you feel. That kind of self-trust isn't built by waiting for the perfect moment. It's built by showing up again and again with intention. Another reason small wins matter is that they help break down resistance. When we think about our goals as massive, far-off achievements, we feel overwhelmed. That pressure often leads to procrastination. But when you focus on small, manageable actions, you bypass that mental resistance. You lower the barrier to entry. You stop thinking about the mountain and start taking the first step. And after that, the second step becomes easier. Progress feeds motivation. Momentum builds energy. And energy creates the fuel for transformation. Transformation doesn't always feel like transformation. It often feels like repetition. It feels like doing the same thing over and over, long before results show. That's where most people give up. They confuse lack of visible results with lack of progress. But what they don't realize is that the change is happening under the surface. Just like a seed buried underground, the growth is invisible for a while, but it's there. Roots are forming. Foundations are being laid. And when the results finally appear, they're a reflection of everything that was built in silence. If you study anyone who's achieved something meaningful, you'll find a pattern consistency over time. Not bursts of brilliance, not streaks of intensity, just steady, disciplined effort repeated with intention. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to build a skill, improve your health, change your mindset, or start a new habit. The same principle applies. Show up every day, do the work. Focus on the next right step. Let go of the need to be perfect. Honor the process. And trust that every small win is pushing you in the direction of something bigger. That's what makes transformation real. Not a single breakthrough, but the collection of small choices made consistently. Over time, these small wins begin to define you. They become who you are. They create a version of you that is strong not because of one big moment, but because of 1,000 quiet ones. Growth is not a race. It's a personal commitment to show up better than you did yesterday in a world that constantly urges people to move faster, achieve more, and stay ahead. It's easy to forget that personal development doesn't have a stopwatch. The pressure to keep up with others often leads to anxiety, burnout, and a distorted sense of self-worth. But growth doesn't follow anyone else's timeline. It unfolds at its own pace, shaped by your choices, experiences, and commitment. It's not about how quickly you improve, it's about how consistently you show up with the intention to improve. When growth is treated like a race, it creates a false urgency. You start comparing your path with someone else's and feeling like you're behind. That's when frustration creeps in. You feel like you're not doing enough, even when you are. You feel like progress isn't happening, even when it is. But growth doesn't reward speed, it rewards depth, it rewards honesty, it rewards the courage to keep going when it would be easier to quit. When you stop treating growth as a race, you free yourself from external pressure and begin to develop from a place of self-respect. Showing up better than you did yesterday isn't about perfection. It's about being intentional. It's about taking responsibility for the small choices that add up over time. Some days that might mean putting in more effort, speaking with more kindness, or facing something you've been avoiding. Other days it might mean resting, reflecting, or allowing yourself to step back and regroup. Growth isn't linear. Some days you move forward, some days you hold steady, some days you learn from setbacks. But as long as you're showing up with awareness and purpose, you're still moving in the right direction. The beauty of this mindset is that it's deeply personal. Your growth doesn't need to look like anyone else's. You define your own standards. You set your own pace. The only person you're accountable to is the version of yourself that came before. That makes the process less about performance and more about progress. It also makes it more sustainable. Because when you focus on your own evolution, you're not chasing approval, you're building alignment, you're not driven by fear of falling behind, you're guided by the desire to become who you're capable of being. It's easy to get distracted by outcomes, to measure your worth by achievement, status, or recognition. But those things can be misleading, they don't always reflect true growth. What truly matters is who you're becoming in the process. Are you more grounded than you were last year? Are you more self-aware, more patient, more willing to face discomfort instead of running from it? Those are the real markers of growth. And they can't be rushed. They have to be lived. They come from repeated experiences, from choices made in silence, from private victories that no one else sees. There's strength in slowing down and staying with the process. Because growth that lasts is never hurried. It's built through repetition, through effort that's honest rather than hurried. When you commit to showing up better each day, even by just 1%, you allow time to work in your favor. The improvements may be invisible at first, but they're taking root, and over time, they become part of who you are. That's the power of consistency. It transforms intention into identity. The mindset of personal commitment also fosters resilience. Because when you accept that growth isn't a race, you stop giving up when you hit a rough patch. You understand that setbacks are part of the process, not the end of it. You learn to recover, to adapt, to stay engaged. You begin to trust the journey instead of forcing results. You start to respect yourself, not just for what you achieve, but for the effort you put in to keep growing. Every day you're given a chance to be slightly better than the day before. Not perfect, just better. And that improvement may not be visible to others, but you'll feel it in the way you think, in the way you respond, in the way you carry yourself. That's what makes growth meaningful. Not that it's fast, Not that it's impressive, but that it's yours. It's built from your own effort, shaped by your own values, and measured by your own standards. That kind of growth is not only powerful, it's lasting. Because it's not something you chase, it's something you become. The journey to becoming better than you were yesterday is not a competition against the world. It's a quiet, personal commitment to yourself. It's about choosing progress over perfection, self-awareness over comparison, and discipline over distraction. Real growth doesn't happen through grand declarations or sudden breakthroughs. It's built through small, consistent actions, honest reflection, and the courage to keep going, especially when no one's watching. Every day offers a new opportunity to evolve, to think better, to act better, to live with more intention than the day before. And when you commit to that mindset, it's no longer about being the best. It's about being better, better than who you were. Because in the end, that's the only race worth running. And it's the one that leads to real, lasting transformation.